Namaskar, welcome to Adimesh. So today's topic is very interesting actually. It is about combustion. How do you predict using combustion basically? So in BPHS, it is mentioned that there are two names given to combustion, Asta and Modh, right? Asta, we all may know, right? That a particular planet, when in close proximity to sun, becomes Asta. That means now their visibility is less. Now, but another name which is very interesting given to combustion is Modhe. Modhe means basically a confusion, a state of confusion, a state of dullness. Now you're in so close proximity to the sun, the graha would become a bit confused because now their significations are required by the sun, the king. Now the king says that I need this particular graha to fulfill what I am here, what I need to fulfill in this particular chart. In that case, whenever you see a particular combusted graha, right, there are three, four ways to look at it. One of them is that the invisibility part, which is also clearly mentioned in BPHS, but how it works out is that if a particular graha is combust, their results may not be an overt theme rather than an underlying theme. Let's suppose Venus is combusted in a chart. In that case, now money, right, is more or less an outcome or an underlying theme of your life. Now you don't want money because for the sake of earning, now money basically solves a particular issue. And you would go to additional lengths to get that money. Whenever you see Venus combusted, once, at least once, their money will be stuck, right? They'll have to try different ways to get their money back. That's a very simple prediction, one of those. Now, the degrees of combustion, let's talk about that first. Is a moon is combusted in 12 degrees, Mars in 17 degrees, Mercury 14, 12 when retrograde, Jupiter 11 degrees, Venus 10 degrees, 8 when retrograde, Saturn 15 degrees. Now, these degrees do have a specific meaning as well, right? More or less, if you'll see, they are either combusted in the first part of the Rashi or in the middle. Because the first part, first 10 degrees represents the initiation, the infancy of the thought or of the graha, the thought process, and of that particular house. Like when you're trying to achieve something. Middle 20, like between 10 to 20 degrees, that particular span consists of the efforts that you put in, and then you started getting something out of it. The last 30 degrees is where you have mastered this. But mastery also comes with a certain level of detachment, as in you are also ready to leave things. So you'd see the combustion eventually happens in the first, either first 10 degrees or between 10 to 20 degrees. So there is a meaning behind it. And also a retrogression for only two grahas, that is Mercury and Venus, right? Because the issue is that basically these are the only two grahas that are between the orbit of Sun and the Earth. So these are the only two grahas that are between Sun and Earth. And you can see whenever a particular graha is retrograded, that is very close. That particular graha is in a close proximity to Earth. You can see that particular graha more closely. That is the analogy. So in this case, even in retrogression, these are the two grahas that basically Mercury and Venus, you would see them commonly combusted or retrograded more often than any other graha. The reason is that even though retrograded, these grahas would still benefit more. Because in retrogression, the chesta bal has increased now. But the issue is now the mistakes will be more. Because the retrograded combusted graha, now that is a very special position. Because now that graha, first of all, is in a confused state, a madhya state, but also now the chesta bal is high. So the person wants to walk towards it constantly, even at times obsessively with some odd habits, but no, the direction is not clear. So, for example, Saturn Jupiter, Saturn is combusted, and let's suppose it is also retrograde. In this case, what happens is the person would help people in their professions, but their own profession will take a toss at moments. But also, there is an issue with trusting people with their hard work. And that could, depending upon the chart, if people would take advantage of it and if people would improve them, depends upon the chart. Now, combustion eventually becomes very important because now a particular graha is not working on its own. Sun decides what gravity of results you can give in your own dasha. So you will see whenever a graha is combusted, the results of those grahas in their own dasha will not be felt as thoroughly as in Surya dasha, in Sun dasha. Because in the dasha of Sun, because the Sun now is taking away the fuel of that particular graha for its utilization. So wherever your Leo is, in the dasha of Sun, you will see the results of that planet which is combusted as well. And also combustion has stages as well. We'll talk about that later. That when a particular graha is behind Sun in terms of combustion and in terms of degrees, and also the combustion where the graha has crossed the degrees of Sun. Those two give completely different results. But first of all, let's talk about what happens, what actually happens. Now, let's suppose if someone has, I saw a chart, Venus, Jupiter in 8th house combusted with Sun. Now, in that combination, first of all, marriage is gone for a toss because the person has to bypass the rule of marriage. Right now, in this case, the marriage was it was an arranged marriage, right? Because they have to bypass the rule of the relationship now. Directly, they got married, and that marriage is not working at all because there is a zero level of understanding, due to which the person had an affair secretly. That is how you see when a combusted graha is giving results because that particular guy is now in a confused state. It doesn't know the direction where it wants to go. It relies on Surya, right? And Surya is saying that I'm going to use it for me, but independently, you work behind the scenes for meaning. So in this case, the person, whichever graha is combusted, right, that creates a dependency on other people for those particular significations. Venus to relationships. Now the dependency is on others. Now the person, even though married, is still dependent on someone else in a way that it is easier for them to get manipulated. But this is not exactly how it is in all the cases. Because Venus combusted actually also creates great diplomats as well. If it's in a good position and a possibility of government job is in the Kundli, creates great diplomats. Because now you have to bypass the rule and now Sun is saying the government is saying, okay, I'll give you immunities now, but do the work for me. Because now you are required by the Sun. So that's how you can predict. But in general life, not everyone is a diplomat. In general life, I took the example of Venus 8th house with Jupiter combusted. That's how you can use this particular rule. That is one example. There are several. Also, with Mercury, I would say combustion is an exception because it doesn't work as badly as or as thoroughly as other grahas because Mercury is very close to Sun in general. So Mercury can still handle combustion very well. But what common things you would see is like with Mercury, when Mercury is combusted, right? There is an issue with choosing the subject. Which subject I should take in my education? These are the people who would have issues while filling the form. When you're in 10th, right, you fill a form of what subjects you want in 11th, either science, commerce, arts, right? So these are the people who would change that decision. Like they would fill the form once, then they would squash and take another form and then fill it again. That's how it works. But Mercury, more or less, generally can handle combustion well, especially if it's retrograded. The effects of combustions are felt not so overtly. Also, now let's talk about how combustion works when a graha is behind Sun and above Sun or ahead of Sun. So let's say if a graha is behind the Sun, which is in general the rule of combustion, and this is generally how people perceive it as well. And if the graha is behind, let's suppose we'll take the same example of Venus, right? If Venus is behind the Sun, now in the marriage, your spouse is totally dependent upon you. And that could create issues in the marriage because now you would be sometimes irritated that why can't you take decisions on your own? Or now the finances of the family are something that now you have to handle. Also, in these cases, when Venus is combusted by solar, the marriages will have issues inside the house. They would not rather fight outside of the houses. So that's a good part, I guess. And the wife or the spouse, be it husband or wife, would feel that their life is controlled by you now. Also, you or the father's decision. Because father could be the man of the house, and then he is making the decisions, which now your wife thinks is controlled by your father. Or if it's in Lagna Lord is involved, then the spouse would think now, in a way, they are controlled by you. And in this case, let's suppose in the same case, if Venus is combusted by Sun and Venus is ahead of Surya. Now, in this case, what happens is now this is not exactly a very good example of a good marriage, or in general, a marriage that would be ideal. Now, the issue is that now the thing is that Venus is now crossed the Sun in terms of degrees, in terms of combustion, and now the spouse would think to actually now they would think, why do I have to be in control? I'm not saying this is a good thing or a bad thing. Even when they thought like their life is controlled by you, I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. That is dependent upon the chart, and every individual has different circumstances. But now, when Venus crosses Sun, now they would think, why do I need to listen? The spouse will think now they would in that case there will be fights in the relationship, constant fights. The fight would be related to like you don't respect me much. Why do you want to control me? But even then, the person will not be able to get out of the control. So that's the reason this is a combination for a bad married life because the marriage is not getting over with. It's not a combination for divorce. It's just that constant fights about the control that is there on that person. There is that. Also, now with the finances, the person becomes a little more frugal. Also, in this case, the spouse may have issues related to kidney as well. So that's how you can predict. Now, there's another rule which through testing I got to know. The degrees of the grahas on which they are combusted, right? The degrees I talked about earlier. Now, what I've seen personally is a concept of perceived combustion when a particular planet is in the sign of Leo, in those degrees which I've mentioned, they would perceive as they're combusted, but actually that is not the case. So let's suppose a Venus is in Leo in 10 degrees, 8 degrees of retrograde, and let's suppose Venus is in 10 degrees in Leo. Now the spouse would think that the like you are controlling them, but that is actually not the case. It is their perception. Due to that perception, now there will be fights, especially after the child is born. So that's how it works. This eventually works, and this is a small misunderstanding that can be actually dealt that you can deal with very easily. But this is a perceived sense of combustion when a person has when a particular planet is in the sign of Leo in their combustion degrees. But in this case now, Sun obviously, if a particular planet is in Leo, obviously the Sun is using them, right, for their significations as well. So hence that particular graha would think that they are in combustion, but actually that is not the case. So this was a very small video that I want to talk about combustion, how it works, how you can use it to predict, and there could be several examples, right? And please tell me in the comments what grahas what the things you've seen in combustion, like how that particular scenario played out in your life, or maybe you've observed something in someone else's life. So thank you so much. And before going, I would request you to please subscribe to the channel and please like the video.